it's Ashley at Bookish Realm, and as you can see from the title of this video, we are here to talk about the importance of intersectionality in terms of two books that I have recently finished, including Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall and All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. So before we get started, I would like to say that this video was not a thing that was necessarily going to happen. Iggy on Twitter actually asked me if I would feel comfortable filming a review for All Boys Aren't Blue, and I did say yes, and I'll be sure to link his Twitter down below in the description box. But I did not really think it was going to turn into a conversation about intersectionality until I went to think about what were some key things that I really enjoyed about All Boys Aren't Blue. And one thing that really stuck out to me was the importance of intersectionality from the perspective of George being Black and queer. And then when I thought about that, I was like, I just read Hood Feminism, which is also a discussion about intersectionality and what it means to be a Black woman and part of this mainstream feminist movement. So I was like, you know what, why not? Let's just go ahead and film this video and talk a little bit about the concept and importance of intersectionality. So if you did not know, if you were not aware, if you've never heard the term intersectionality, it was actually coined by Kimberlee Crenshaw. I believe that her title is, I think she's a law professor at Columbia University. If I'm wrong, I'll make sure that I do correct that title somewhere on the bottom of the screen. But she came up with intersectionality, which is a theoretical framework that looks at how individuals who are part of different or several different marginalized groups face a unique form of discrimination and also changes their status and role in society. So when we say different marginalized groups or several marginalized groups, it can be being Black and being a woman. There were a couple videos that I had watched, and this is just, I think I had to look at this a little bit when I was in college, if I'm not mistaken, and I went through and looked at some refresher videos. So I will link some of her conversations down in the description box. I think one of the examples she used is that Black girls are more likely to get suspended from school than white girls, and that issue is not only just a race issue, but it most likely is also a gender issue. So those are unique challenges that Black girls will face because they're fitting into two different marginalized groups. She explains the theory much better because it is her brainchild, and she looks at it from the perspective of a lawyer, and she does a phenomenal job explaining why it's so important to look at intersectionality, why we must acknowledge that intersectionality does exist. So the first book that I read, Hood Feminism, looks at intersectionality from the perspective of Black women. And I find this conversation to be a very interesting because a lot of people now are trying to figure out why, when we talk about, for example, Black lives mattering, that a lot of the cases that we talk about deal with Black men and not with Black women, when Black women are also, I think, and if I'm wrong, someone let me know, but I think that Black women face police brutality at about the same rate as Black men, but it doesn't get discussed as much. And I think that a lot of that has to do with this whole concept of intersectionality and how the world views Black women. So for example, we can look at the case with George Floyd and his murder and how that has gained a lot of traction, how that has become essentially a household name, while Breonna Taylor's case is still, people are talking about it, but it's not as much as they should be. And that often is the case with a lot of Black women who face police brutality. I always like to remind people of the quote that Malcolm X always uses in reference to Black women, and I'm reading it off my phone. That's why I'm looking down, because I don't remember it word for word, and I want to say it word for word. He says, "The most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the Black woman. The most neglected person in America is the Black woman." And that has a whole lot to do with this concept of intersectionality, where not only do we have to deal with discrimination because we're women, but we also deal with discrimination because we're Black. Hood Feminism looks at how mainstream feminism leaves out Black women, other women of color, trans women. So it's impossible for mainstream feminism to really move forward when they're leaving out such important voices. According to Mikki Kendall, some of the issues that Black women face that are not discussed by mainstream feminism include educational issues, poverty, food scarcity, as well as gun violence. One of my favorite conversations that happened in hood feminism was in relation to the Me Too movement, which I'm sure everyone is 100% aware of what the Me Too movement is. If you're not, just in case, I will make sure that I do leave a link to an article explaining what the Me Too movement is. Mikki has discussed in a lot of interviews that the Me Too movement should start considering what voices they're pushing forward when we discuss about the sexual assault and rape of women in America. What ends up happening is that victim blaming becomes part of the narrative when the victim doesn't look like what we expect the victim to be, and quite often that is cisgendered white women. Black women and other women of color are often blamed, and they are looked at as individuals who have no morals, loose, fast, with a capability of preventing any type of assault or rape that may happen to them. I myself have seen things like this firsthand, so when she spoke to this narrative, I was completely on board for this conversation. Mikki Kendall does a wonderful job of also referencing that unless these issues are handled on a more serious level and acknowledged by mainstream feminism, we can't really trust the feminist movement to speak for Black women or other women of color. These issues are serious issues that impact Black women and other women of color on a day-to-day basis, and in order to create a feminist movement that speaks to all issues, then mainstream feminism has to acknowledge that these issues do exist and do affect their counterparts within this movement. Mikki Kendall also discusses that sometimes it's hard for Black women to want to be a part of the feminist movement when they don't feel like their voices are heard or they're even acknowledged being part of the movement. And this book, Intersectionality, is all about the crossroads of being a Black and a woman in America. And if you have no idea what it's like to be Black and a woman in America, you just need to sit down and have a conversation with a Black woman, because it is hard. It is difficult. I personally feel like a lot of times Black women go unseen and unheard, and a lot of times we are given stereotypes that are unwarranted. We are given the angry Black girl stereotype when we are just using our voices to stand up for what we think is right. We're often considered to be aggressive, too loud. A lot of times we are considered to be strong, too strong. And sometimes that creates an even bigger problem, because when we have this narrative that Black women are so strong, there leaves that gray area for us not to be protected. I really appreciated reading this book as a Black woman, because a lot of the issues that she discussed are issues that I have seen in my short time here on earth, and there's still issues that I see that other Black women face. If you are interested in understanding more about the Black experience through the lens of a woman, I would definitely recommend checking this out, and also think about reconsidering what the feminist movement means to you and how that affects your counterparts that may also identify as Black, other women of color, and trans. As you can tell, I ended up giving the book 5 out of 5 stars. The next book, All Boys Are in Blue by George M. Johnson, looks at intersectionality in a different way. In his book, George looks at the experience of identifying as Black and queer. If you did not know, the Black community has had a very troublesome relationship with the LGBTQIA+ community. There are a lot of conversations discussing how even coming out may be a more difficult process for those who identify as Black, and also others who identify as people of color. While George's experience coming out was not, and I don't want to say the word it wasn't hard, but it was not as traumatic as it could have been for other boys and men that identify as POC, he does acknowledge that that intersectionality does create a bigger problem for some individuals. What I think I enjoyed most about All Boys Aren't Blue is that George spends a great deal of time creating this positive experience for people of color that may identify as queer, specifically Black individuals that identify as queer. And a lot of times when Black individuals identify as queer, we hear a lot of negative narratives, and I think George's intent with his book was to create this atmosphere that is not, it's not all depressing, it's not all sad, it's not all gloom. He does take the opportunity to go through each aspect of his life, these essays that he is writing as odes to his grandmother, to his father, to his brother, to his line brothers, which I also absolutely loved. If you guys did not know, I am in a Greek letter organization, a Black Greek letter organization, which is different. We are the Divine Nine. George is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And it was so great to hear about his experience and being a part of a Black Greek letter organization and also identifying as queer, because we don't always have the best history with welcoming individuals into our organizations that do identify as queer, and it has been a super troubled experience for a lot of people. And it was so nice to hear that his line brothers were so welcoming and so tight-knit, in that he just had a great experience pledging into this organization. It was so good. I think that was probably one of the best parts of the book that I read. I also love the relationship that George had with his family, and I also liked that he not only touched on issues, and this is going back to that conversation about intersectionality, he not only touched on issues that face the queer community, but also issues that face the Black community. He in length talks about what it's like for Black people to wear this mask, and this is something that a Black person could understand without necessarily identifying as queer. And what he was talking about is how Black individuals spend a lot of time wearing a different persona than we have around family and friends. So how we function in our professional lives is not how we may appear to be in our personal lives. And I know that some people are saying like, well, don't all people carry themselves differently professionally? No, what I'm saying is even in how we speak, how we carry ourselves, how we dress, we can't fully be ourselves sometimes. So we are wearing a mask to hide our true personalities. And a lot of what that means is like code switching. I know we talked about this a little bit in a town hall meeting, and how code switching is a thing that a lot of us learn from the time that we learn to talk. You put on your, I think someone said in the live stream, you put on your telephone voice, where people can't tell whether you're Black or white because people don't feel comfortable hearing AAVE in a professional setting, because it is often associated with things like poverty, broken English. I think that this entire novel is a novel of hope. It is a novel of hope for Black people. It is a novel of hope for queer people. It is a novel of hope for people who identify as Black and queer. And I love that. I absolutely love that. There were so many moments in this book where I laughed, and moments where I was almost in tears, because I felt for so many things that he had been through. He is very open about a lot of his experiences, and I think it's just a phenomenal book that people should take the opportunity to read. And if you can't tell, I actually did end up giving that one 5 out of 5 stars as well. So if you all are interested in looking at 2 books that focus on intersectionality, they focus on the Black experience, and you want some more nonfiction to read in your life, these 2 are so good. I know a lot of people in the book community are already picking up George's book All Boys Aren't Blue, but I definitely would highly recommend it picking up Hood Feminism as well, because it was just, it's such It's such a powerful book, and these two books just together will make you think more about what it means to be a part of two marginalized groups and how discrimination works when you are a part of two marginalized groups. All right, y'all, that's it. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. Remember, I upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you're interested in following me on social media, all of my links will be down in the description box, and I'll be back with another video soon.